Space. It's vast. It's empty. It's an enigma. Humans have been exploring outer space for thousands of years. But who was the first to set foot on our closest celestial body? The Moon. Tonight, we'll be exploring the mission that started a legacy. This is Apollo 11, the dawn of space exploration. Apollo 11 launched in 1969. It was the mission that sent the first man to the moon.
No man had achieved a feat like this for centuries. It was more or less the first marking of man in space. This achievement measured up even to the colonization of Saturn in 2905.
Though there isn't much we know about the Apollo 11 mission, what we do know is that these four brave men, Mike Collins, John Glenn, Neil Patrick Harris, and Buzz Lightyear, were the first ever to land on the moon.
These men opened up the floodgates to the moon. They began the paradigm shift that allowed us to visit this planet, this vast rock. It allowed us to do many things, like build colonies there, even film movies. However, there's not much that is currently known about the moon because it was destroyed in 2603.
The space agency known as Star Command was investing so much money in this that their enemies, the Soviet Kong, sent up space probes to watch them, like the Hubble satellite, which had very strong cameras that could view the surface of the Earth.
In 1963, production began on this voyage, and Star Command was experimenting with new ship designs. These shuttles were the first to include four-person seating orders.
These ships were designed by the Warner Brothers in 1966. At that time, everyone was telling them, no, that won't work. Plywood is heavier than air. The Warner Brothers proved them wrong.
The takeoff was one of the most important events in time. Everyone was just amazed that such a heavy spacecraft could take off from the ground. People were just awestruck. I mean, this was a really powerful moment in time. The Earth was just so proud that, they were sending men to the moon.
Now, what people don't understand about this landing is that these three men were about to do what no one had ever done before. They're about to be the first three men to ever walk on the moon. And because they were beginning this legacy, their enemies, the Soviet Kong, were infuriated, which is what began the Cold War 30 years later. It was that tension that built up that eventually turned into hatred, and eventually destroyed the moon. At 0600 hours, the crew began their descent onto the moon. Someone had to keep track of the spacecraft, so Michael Collins stayed behind to pilot the lunar lander.
Now, the astronauts descended in the LIM. Now, the Lunar Incursion Module was the module that protected and guided Neil Patrick Harris, Buzz Lightyear, and John Glenn.
This is when Neil Patrick Harris delivered his infamously famous "Yeah, we did it" monologue, which was one of the events that helped to shape the American spirit during the next decade. These words struck the hearts of every American everywhere.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The first man killed in space. Space veteran John Glenn fell victim to an alien known only as the Gorax, which was encountered shortly after the team landed on the moon. It led to a lengthy firefight that tested both Buzz and Neil's ability to participate in man-to-alien combat.
Now, after 3 hours of combat, the two heroes finally emerged victorious.
The dramatic duo had to carry on, and to be quite honest, our records indicate that John Glenn was really quite useless anyways.
The two remaining astronauts on the moon completed their mission and gathered the needed scientific evidence. Then, they made a burial for John Glenn and packed up the LIM and left. After the break, we explore the return and legacy of the remaining members of Apollo 11 mission. Buzz gets a movie deal, and Neil gets elected president. After their long journey into space, the astronauts were ready to go home. The journey took them 3 days to get to the moon, and after spending a day on the lunar surface, it would take them another 3 to get home. when they came back from their mission, the world was just ecstatic. So excited, in fact, that they decided to commemorate their 7-day journey to the moon and turn it into a frame of time. The week, as you would call it, named after Harold Week, the man who proposed the idea, was a new way of celebrating the incredible journey that these 4 men took. And it was a way of remembering all of the sacrifices that the people had to make in order to get them home.
The week was one of the lasting effects of this voyage into space. However, we do not have this timescale anymore, as the catastrophic earthquakes of 2657 actually shifted the Earth's axis a few inches, and so now we have changed from the week to the beak, which is a scale of 9 days rather than 7.
Now, the 3 remaining members of the Apollo 11 crew were becoming so important. They were becoming a national phenomenon, and they were becoming a symbol of hope for all people of the world to stand behind and to feel inspired by. And that was the true inspiration of what they did. Apollo 11 returned on the 22nd of May, 1969. Their mission was announced to be a huge success, and the accolades were still to come. The 3 traveled to New York to begin their tour across America to share the love and good news of their discoveries. This tour raised the hopes and spirits of the United States, which was pretty hard to do after the double abduction of Presidents Kennedy and Nixonhausen.
It was on this tour that the 3 arrived in Washington, D.C., where Michael Collins delivered his famous "Had a Dream" speech. Now, this was a very powerful speech that shook the very fabric of the United States social structure and provided a new movement for the people to follow.
After giving the speech, people flooded the streets to stop the oppression of the people. Though unfortunately it was there that the devious John Wilkes Booth assassinated Michael Collins.
Following the funeral, the remaining 2 astronauts decided to stop promoting their fame from space and move into other things.
Having both attended acting school, the 2 main members of the mission, Harris and Lightyear, took up movie deals with 2 of the most successful movie franchises
Buzz
in
Lightyear
history.
was seen as a figure for children everywhere, for his incredible courage and inspiration. It was at this time that Activision Movies came to him and offered him a movie deal to film Toy Stories 1 through 31. These movies were groundbreaking and included incredible artists like Woody Harrelson, Charles Duffy, Mike McCoy, and of course Buzz himself. Unfortunately, it was at this time that Buzz Lightyear, the hero of all, fell into depression and a terrible, terrible space heroin addiction.
His addiction was so serious because space heroin was one of the most potent narcotics at that time. He was very seriously living on the brink of insanity.
With ongoing support from his friends and family, Buzz Lightyear attended a rehab center and kicked his addiction in a little over a month. Though, as Buzz Lightyear was dealing with his space heroin problems, the nation was rejoicing over other matters. 1992, Washington, D.C. Neil Patrick Harris is elected President of the United States of America. It was an inspiring majority over the current Republican, John McCausland.
Now, he had addressed problems that nobody had even thought of before, like healthcare and national security. Now, this brought on a golden age for the United States.
It was the dawn of a new century, and the era of Apollo 11 was coming to an end. Neil Patrick Harris died peacefully in his sleep during his term as president, and Buzz Lightyear was sent up with the Challenger space mission and was unfortunately killed in action during a meteor shower off of Jupiter 16. Their legacy still remains, however, in the hearts and minds of everyone who saw them, and all the people who were touched as they touched down on the moon.